Hello everyone, this is Melanie from Lake Beamish Treasures, and now I'm going to read the final section of David Lynch's book, Catching the Big Fish. Meditation, consciousness, and creativity. For those of you who don't know, David Lynch is the director who has done Twin Peaks, Mulholland Drive, Eraserhead, Wild at Heart. So he's very Blue Velvet. He is very deep in thought, and he's also a painter and artist and into transcendental meditation. I'll get my words out. So I am going to be reading the final section of the book. I'll be finishing it today, and we'll start on page 121. And if you like this content, don't forget, leave a thumbs up, leave a comment below. Also, give me any suggestions on future books you would like me to read. I'll be reading many books from my library and do short little snippet videos, releasing a new video every day. Thank you. So page 121 of David Lynch's Catching the Big Fish. Texture. I don't necessarily love rotting bodies, but there's a texture to a rotting body that is unbelievable. Have you ever seen a little rotted animal? I love looking at those things just as much as I love to look at the close-up of some tree bark, or a small bug, or a cup of coffee, or a piece of pie. You get in close, and the textures are wonderful. Working with wood. Wood is one of the greatest materials to work with. There are softwoods, hardwoods, and they all have their own beauty when you're working with them. When I saw a piece of freshly cut pine, the smell of it just sends me right to heaven. The same goes for pine needles. I used to chew ponderosa pine pitch, which is the sap that oozes out of the tree, dries on the outside of the bark. If you can get a fresh piece of pitch, it's like syrup. It will stick to you and you won't be able to get it off your hands. But sometimes it hardens like old honey, and you can chew this, and the flavor of the pine pitch will make you go crazy in a good way. Pine, being a softer wood, is easy to work with and it's readily available. When I was young, I did a lot of things with pine. But then I started falling in love with Douglas firs. Vertical grain Douglas fir, when you varnish a piece of Douglas fir, it has a depth of beauty that is just phenomenal. And when you put two pieces of wood together, you start to realize that there's so many possibilities. You learn some tricks along the way. And then there's Gunther, a German carpenter who doesn't use electric tools at all. He would just come up to the house with a set of hand tools in a beautiful wooden box with a handle. He'd carry it around, and Gunther, I would watch this man, did little detail work on Douglas fir. He would put these two pieces of wood together, and then he'd rub his old battered thumb against the seam, and the seam would disappear. It was like a magic act, fitting the pieces together perfectly. Gunther was a real carpenter. Having a setup. Some mornings in a perfect world, you might wake up, have coffee, finish meditating, and say, okay, today I'm going to go to the shop and work on a lamp. This idea comes to you. You can see it, but to accomplish this, you need what I call a setup. For example, you may need a working shop, you may need working painting studio, you may need working music, or a computer room where you can write something. It's crucial to have a setup. So at any given moment, when you get an idea, you have a place and the tools to make it happen. If you don't have a setup, there are many times when you won't get the inspiration, the ideas. But if you have no tools and no place to put it together, and then the idea just sits there and festers. Over time, it goes away. You didn't fulfill it, and that's just heartache. Fire. Sitting in front of a fire is mesmerizing. It's magical. I feel the same way about electricity and smoke and flickering lights. Light on film. Often in a scene, the room and the light together signifies a mood. So even if the room isn't perfect, you can work with light and get a feel to correct. so that it has the mood when it comes out with the original idea. The light can make all the difference in a film, even in a character. I love seeing people come out of darkness. The Straight Story. I didn't write The Straight Story. It was something of a departure for me because it's completely linear. But then I fell in love with the emotion of the script. So you can fall in love with something that already exists too. And it's similar to falling in love with an idea. You get that feeling of what it could be on film and that it guides you. Heroes of film. I am a huge admirer of Billy Wilder. There are two films of his that I most love because they create such a world of their own: Sunset Boulevard and The Apartment. And then there's Fellini, who is a tremendous inspiration. I like La Strada, 8.5, but really all of them, again, in the world of characters and mood and this level, which you can put your finger, there comes one in each one. I love Hitchcock. Rear Window is a film that makes me crazy in a good way. There's such a coziness with James Stewart in one room, and then there's a cool room, and there's people who come into the room, Grace Kelly, for instance, and Thelma Ritter. It's just so fantastic that they're all on this mystery that's unfolding out of their window. It's magical, and everyone who sees it feels it. It's nice going back to that place and visit. Fellini. I was shooting a commercial in Rome, and I was working with two people who I've worked with Fellini. He was in a hospital in Northern Ireland, but we heard he moved down to Rome. So I said, do you think it would be possible to go over and say hello to him? And they said, yeah, we'll try to arrange that. There was an attempt on Thursday night that fell through, but Friday night we went over. It was about 6 o'clock in the evening, a beautiful, warm evening. Two of us went in, and we were taken to Fellini's room. There was another man in the room, and my friend knew him, so he went over and talked to him. Fellini had me sit down. He was a little wheelchair between two beds, and he took my hand. We sat and talked for half an hour. I don't think I asked him much. I just listened. He talked about the old days, how things were. He told stories. I liked sitting near him. And then we left. That was Friday night. On Sunday, he went into a coma and never came out. Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick is my all-time favorite filmmaker, and he did me a great honor early in my career that really encouraged me. I was working on The Elephant Man, and I was at Lee International Studios in England, standing in the hallway. One of the producers of The Elephant Man, Jonathan Sanger, brought me over to some guys who were working with George Lucas and said, they've got a story for you. And I said, okay. They said, yesterday, David, we were on the Elstra studio and we met Kubrick. And as we were talking to them, he said to us, how would you fellows like to come up to my house tonight and see one of my favorite films? They said, that would be fantastic. They went up and Stanley Kubrick showed them Eraserhead. So right there, I could have passed away peacefully and happy. I like all of Kubrick's films, but my favorite may be Lolita. I just like the world. I like the characters. I love the performances. Mason is phenomenal beyond in this film. Inland Empire. We are like the spider. We weave our life and then move along it. We are like the dreamer who dreams and then lives in a dream. This is true for the entire universe. Upanishads. When we began, there wasn't an Inland Empire. There wasn't anything. I just bumped into Laura Dern on the street, discovering that she was my new neighbor. I hadn't seen her for a long time, and she's like, David, we got to do something together again. And I said, we sure do. Maybe I'll write something for you, and maybe we'll do an experiment on the internet. And she said, fine. So I wrote a 14-page monologue, and Laura memorized all 14 pages. And it was like about a 72-minute take. She was phenomenal. I couldn't release it on the internet because it was too good, and it drove me crazy because there was something about that held secret for me. And I would ponder over this thing, and something more would emerge, and then it would lead to another scene, but I wouldn't know what it was, and it didn't make much sense. But then another idea came from another scene, and then another one, and the third one, and very far removed from the first two. even though the second was quite a jump from the first. One day we were getting ready to shoot a scene called The Little House, which involved Laura Dern and my friend Krzysztof Marzewski, an actor from Poland. Krzysztof had arrived in Los Angeles from Poland, and the Kemmer Image gang brought him over to my house. When he got out of the car, he was wearing these goofy glasses, and he smiled and pointed to the glasses. So I had this idea that he planned to wear those things in a scene. No, no, Krzysztof said. I need a prop. I need a thing. So I went into my office, I opened up the cupboard, and I saw a piece of broken tile. I saw a rock. I saw a red light bulb. And I saw a very transparent Christmas light. I took all these things out and offered him. Take one of these, Krzysztof. And he picked up the bulb. I put the other things away. I wasn't going to let him have any of those. I just gave him the bulb. So we went out to the small house. Krzysztof came back from behind the tree with a red bulb in his mouth. And that's how we shot the scene. So one thing led to the other. I had this feeling that if there's a unified feel, there must be unity between Christmas tree bulb and this man from Poland who came in wearing those strange glasses. It's interesting to see how these unrelated things live together, and it gets your mind working. How do these things relate when they seem so far apart? It conjures up a third thing that almost unifies the first two. It's a struggle to see how this unity in the midst of diversity could work. The ocean in the unity and the things that float in it. And I thought, well, obviously, there's got to be a way that these relate because this is the great unified field. There couldn't be a fragment that doesn't relate to everything. It's kind of this one thing, I felt. So I had high hopes that there would be a unity emerging, and I would see the way that all these things were related to one another. But it wasn't until halfway that I suddenly realized I saw a kind of form that unite the rest, everything that came before. And that was the big day. That was a good day because I pretty much said that this would be a feature film. The name. One day, still very early in the process, I was talking to Laura Dern and learned that her new husband, Ben Harper, is from Inland Empire in Los Angeles. We were talking along and she mentioned, I don't know when it popped up, but I said the title of the film. I knew nothing about the film at the time, but I wanted to call it Inland Empire. My parents have a log cabin up in Montana. My brother, cleaning up there one day, found a scrapbook behind a dresser. He sent it to me because it was a little scrapbook from when I was 5 years old, from when I lived in Spokane. I opened up the scrapbook and the first picture was an aerial view of Spokane, and underneath it said Inland Empire. So I figured I was on the right track. A new way to work. Working on Inland Empire was so different. We shot it entirely in digital video, so the level of flexibility and control was amazing. Also, I didn't have a script. I wrote the thing scene by scene, without much of a clue as where it would end. It was a risk, but I had this feeling that because all these things are unified, this idea would somehow relate to the idea over there. And I was working on a great company called Studio Canal in France, who believed in me, enough to let me find my way. Director's commentary. I don't do director's commentary tracks on my DVD releases. I know people enjoy, but now with all the add-ons, the film just seemed to have gotten lost. We have to guard the film itself. It should stand alone. You work so hard to get a film to a certain way, and you shouldn't fiddle with it. Director's commentaries just open up the door to changing people's take on the number one thing, the film. I do believe telling stories surrounding a film, but to comment on it is a rolling sacrilege. Instead, I think you should try to see the film through, see it in a quiet place on as big of a screen as you can with a good sound system as you can. Then you can get into that world and have an experience. The death of film. I'm through with film as a medium. For me, film is dead. If you look at what people over the world are taking still pictures with, you begin to see what's happening. I'm shooting in digital video because I love it. I have a website and I started doing small experiments with the site with small cameras. At first, they were just like little toys and was not very good. But then I started realizing that they're very good, at least for me. You have 40-minute takes automatic focus. They're lightweight and you can see what you got right away. With film, you have to go into the lab and you don't see what you've got, what you've shot. But with DV, as soon as you're done, you can put it onto the computer and go right to work. And there are so many tools. 1,000 tools were born this morning. 10,000 new tools tomorrow. It happens so fast. Now everybody's got Pro Tools, and you can manipulate these sounds, fine-tune them unbelievably fast. The same thing's happening with the image. It gives you so much control. I started thinking and experimenting. I did some tests from DV to film because you still have to transfer to film the show to theater. And although it does not look exactly like it was shot on film, it looks way better than I thought. Once you start working in the world of DV with small lightweight equipment and automatic focus, working with film seems to be cumbersome. Those 35mm cameras are starting to look like dinosaurs to me. They're huge, they weigh tons, and then you gotta move them around. With DV, everything is lighter. You're into mobile. It's far more fluid. You can think on your feet and catch things. And for actors to get into character in the middle of a scene and then suddenly have to stop while we reload the film cameras after 10 minutes, often it breaks the thing. But now you're rolling along, you've got 40 minutes down in there, you could start talking to the actors instead of stopping, you can move it and push it, you can even rehearse while you're shooting, although I start goofing up at the soundtrack because they gotta chop off all my words. But many times I'm talking to the actors while we're shooting and we're able to get deeper and deeper. DV for young filmmakers. My advice is to use the opportunity DV brings to find what you truly believe in. Keep your own voice. Don't do anything for the sole purpose of impressing any studio or some money people. That always seems to backfire. In my experience, it's great to go to film school and to get a lot of intellectual knowledge there, but learn by doing. And now that the costs have fallen, you really go and do your own thing. Then there are lots of film festivals that you can enter and see if you catch some distribution or financial help later on. DV quality. The DV camera I currently use is a Sony PD-150, which is a low quality than HD, and I love this lower quality. I love the small cameras. The quality reminds me of the films in the 1930s. In the early days, the emulsion wasn't so good. There was less information on the screen. The Sony PD result is a bit like that, nowhere near high def. And sometimes in a frame, if there's questions about what you're seeing or some dark corner, the mind can go dreaming. Even if everything is crystal clear in the frame, and that's what it is, that's all it is. And high def, unfortunately, is so crystal clear. I saw a piece of film on screen in my mixing room, shot in high def, and it was like out of some science fiction. In the background, I could see wood screws in what was supposed to be a metal console. It's going to be far more difficult to build sets in high definition. The future of cinema. How we see films is changing. The video, the iPod, videos online are changing everything. A little picture instead of a giant big picture is going to be how people see films. And the good news is, at least people will have headphones. Sound will become, I think, even more important. But then maybe you could put the iPod in something and squirt the image on a big screen in your home. Have subwoofers and beautiful speaker systems and quietness in the home so that you could fall into this world. The whole thing is that when the curtains open, the lights go down, we must be able to get into that world. And in many ways, it's getting very difficult to go into that world. People talk so much in the theaters, and there's tiny, crummy little picture. How do you get that experience? I think there's going to be a bit of a bumpy road, but the possibility is there for very clean pictures. No scratches, no dirt, no watermarks, no tearing, and an image can be controlled in an infinite number of ways. If you take care of how you show a film, it can be a beautiful experience that lets you get into the world. We're still working out ways for that to happen, but digital is here, the video iPod is here, and we just got to get real and roll with the flow. Common sense. Most filmmaking is common sense. If you stare on your toes and think about how to do a thing, it's right there. Advice. The truth upholds the fragrant earth and makes the living water wet. Truth makes fire burn and the air move, makes the sun shine and all life grow. A hidden truth supports everything. Find it and win. Ramayana. Stay true to yourself. Let your voice ring out and don't let anybody fiddle with it. Never turn down a good idea, but never take a bad idea. And meditate. It's very important to experience that self, that pure consciousness. It's really helped me. I think it would help any filmmaker. So start diving within, in living and bliss consciousness. Grow in happiness and intuition. Experience the joy of doing, and you'll glow in a peaceful way. Your friends will be happy, very happy with you. Everyone will want to sit next to you, and people will give you money. Sleep. Sleep is very important. You need to rest the physiology to be able to work well and meditate. When I don't get enough sleep, my meditations are duller. You may even dip into sleep at the beginning of your meditation because you're settling down. But you will be well rested. You will have a clearer, deeper experience. Maybe in a sleepy meditation you're transcending a little. But it's far better to have a very clear, clean system as you go in. And when you dive, it's a powerful and deep dive. When you meditate, the mind settles down to the deepest level, and the physiology settles down right behind it. And now, through lots of research, they know that the deepest state in meditation, you're getting 3 times deeper rest than that of the deepest sleep. Still, sleep is important to prepare to get to that level. Keep at it. It's a tricky business. You want to do your art, but you got to live. So you gotta have a job. And then sometimes you're too tired to do your art. But if you love what you're doing, you're gonna keep on doing it anyway. I have been very lucky. Along the way, there are people who help us. I've had plenty of those people in my life who help me go to the next level. And you get that help because you've done something. So you have to keep doing it. So much of what has happened to me is good fortune. But I gives you some time. Get your sleep and get a little bit of food and work as much as you can. There's so much enjoyment in doing what you love. Maybe this will open and you'll find a way to do what you love. I hope so. In some ways, the more films you've done, the easier it is to make. You become familiar with the process of catching an idea and translating that idea. You understand the tools and the lighting. You understand the whole process. You've been through it before. But it's also harder because when you release another film, it's seen in the context of what you've already done. It's going to be judged based on that. And if you just come off sounding with something successful, you feel it, you may take the fall. But if you come down from something very low, as I did after Dune, there may be zero fear. You can feel you can't get any lower. You may experience this euphoria and freedom that you have nothing to lose. You may have to learn to find the balance of success and failure. Success can kill you just as failure can. And the only way to balance in success and failure is to function on that unified field level. There's your friend. You can't fake it. You're either in that field or you're not. And when that field is fully enlivened, you can't lose no matter what happens. Gone fishing again. Curving back up my own nature, I create again and again. Bhagavad Gita. When you finish a project, there's a good feeling to it, but there's something of a vacuum too. You've been putting all your attention on that, and it's done. It's like fishing. You caught a beautiful fish yesterday, you're out today with the same bait, and you're wondering if you're going to catch another. But you carry on the analogy of fishing. Sometimes, even if you sit with lots and lots of patience, no fish will come. You're in the wrong area. And so maybe you reel in that hook, get the paddle, and move to another place. This means you leave the chair where you're daydreaming and move on to another thing. Just changing something, the desire often gets fulfilled. It doesn't mean that you just have to sit and wait for it to come. I don't know what it brings, But the desire, if it's kept alive, will often be validated with an idea. When you get an idea, you know you've got a validation. Compassion. Softer than the flower where kindness is concerned, stronger than thunder where principles are at stake. Vedic definition of the enlightened. Meditation is not a selfish thing. Even though you're diving in and experiencing the self, you're not closing yourself off from the world. You're strengthening yourself so that you can be more effective when you go back out into the world. It's like they say on airplanes, first put your mask on, then help those next to you put theirs on. My friend Charlie Lutz used to say, there's a guy crying on the curb and you sit down to comfort him, and pretty soon there's two guys crying on the curb. So compassion, appreciation for others, and the capacity to help others are enhanced when you meditate. You start driving down and experiencing this ocean of pure love and pure peace. You can say pure compassion. You experience that and knowing it. Then you go out into the world and you could really do something for the people. Consciousness-based education. One of the main things that got me talking publicly about transcendental meditation was seeing the difference it can make to kids. Kids are suffering. Stress is now hitting them younger and younger. And just about the time they get out of the crib, there are so many different learning disorders that I've never heard of before. At the same time, I saw results of conscious-based education, which is education that develops the full potential of a human being. It's the same education everyone receives, with the added bonus that the student learns to dive within and unfold the self, that pure consciousness. There's a school principal, Dr. George Rutherford in Washington, D.C., who has introduced transcendental meditation into 3 schools. Before that, the schools were filled with violence. There were shootings, suicides, and violence. But he got the staff meditating, got the teachers meditating, got the students meditating, and watched it turn around. There's another principal, Carmen Namdi in Detroit, who introduced transcendental meditation in her school. Nakati Taliban was about 9 years ago. The kids meditated 10 minutes in the morning together, 10 minutes in the afternoon, and the school is a blissful school. Those kids are happier, getting better grades, and going out and experiencing all kinds of success. It's something that works. You take in more intellectual knowledge during school because it's so much fun, but you're expanding that container of knowledge. You contrast that with normal education produces, which is a joke. It's facts and figures, but the knower does not know him or himself. One night I saw a play in the Maharishi School in Iowa, a school that is conscious-based education. It was a cold, rainy night, and when I was told I was going to see a high school play, I thought, man, it's going to be a very long night. I was sitting in the middle of this little theater, a beautiful little theater, and on stage came the students. They weren't professional actors, they were just kids putting on a play. But I've never been more blown away. It was better than a Broadway production because I saw that this was consciousness on these faces. A lively, glowing consciousness. They had such intellect and timing. Their humor was right on the money. You don't worry about students like that. They're self-sufficient. They're going to do fine with the world, and they're going to make a world better at being in it. My foundation, the David Lynch Foundation for Consciousness-Based Education and World Peace, was set up to help more kids with that kind of experience. We've raised money and given it to schools all over the country for thousands and thousands of students to learn how to meditate. And it's amazing to see what the kids do. Stress doesn't catch them. It's like water off a duck's back. I want to do this not only for the students' sake, but for the growth of consciousness, but for all, because we are like light bulbs. And like light bulbs, we can enjoy the brighter light of consciousness within. And it also radiates. I believe that is the key to the peace. If there were 10,000 new meditating students, it would affect this country. It would be like a wave of peace. It's harmony, coherence, real peace. In the individual that lights of consciousness drives negatively further and further away, in a world it can do the same thing. Real peace. Avert the danger that has not yet come. Yoga Sutras. People are so convinced that we can't have peace, it's now a joke. Somebody wins a beauty pageant, and the joke is she wants world peace, and everybody has a big laugh. Nobody believes in peace. It's a nice idea, but that's all it is. A sweet little old lady idea. It's meaningless. It's never going to happen. And we live in this hellhole and we think that's the way it's going to be. But what if we were wrong? We know that in one human being, when you ramp up consciousness, when you ramp up that light of unity, negative things begin to recede. In that individual, you see more and more intelligence, more and more creativity, more and more bliss. Negativity goes away and a positive influence pouring out into the world. So if there were many, many mediators, it would be beautiful. But even without that, a small group of advanced mediators could still make a huge difference. The theory is that if the square root of 1% of the world's population, or 8,000 people, practice advanced meditation techniques in a group, and then that group, according to published research, is quadratically more powerful than the same number scattered about. The peace-creating groups have been formed for short studies, and every time advanced mediators get together in a group, they dramatically affect the area around them. They measurably reduce crime and violence. But how did they do that? There's a field of unity within everyone. It's always been there. It's unbounded, infinite, and eternal. It's that level of life that never had a beginning. It is that level it will be forever, and it can be enlivened. In the human being, enlivening the field leads to enlightenment, the full potential of the individual. In a world, the result of enlivening unity is by peace-creating group. That would be the real peace on earth. In closing, I'd like to say I deeply love film. I love catching ideas. I love to meditate. I love enlivening unity. And I think the enlivening of unity brings a better life. Maybe enlightenment is far better, but it's said that when you walk towards the light, with every step, things get brighter. Every day for me has been getting better and better, and I believe that enlivening unity in the world will bring peace on world. So I say, peace to all of you. May everyone be happy. May everyone be free of disease. May auspiciousness be seen everywhere. May suffering belong to no one. Peace. So that was David Lynch's Catching the Big Fish. Meditation, consciousness, and creativity. Thank you so much. That was the last chapter of this book. I will be reading a new book, so stay tuned for the next book. If you like this content, be sure to hit the thumbs up, like, subscribe, hit the little notification so you get more notified when I do other videos. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.